Today's lesson is celebrating the lives of the dead, the Day of the Dead, and Obon. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And today we're going to continue talking about celebrations for the dead, celebrating people who have passed away. We're not celebrating the fact that they did pass away. Oh, I'm glad that person's dead. He was such an obnoxious person when he was alive. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about celebrating people that have passed away, and they were people that we loved, especially family members. And last time, of course, we talked about Day of the Dead in Mexico, Dia de Muertos or Dia de los Muertos. You can say it both ways in Spanish. And today, however, we're going to shift our attention closer to home, and we're going to be talking about this kind of celebration in Japan called Obon.
Yes, this celebration in Japan called Obon evidently is very similar to the Day of the Dead in that it doesn't view the dead or dying as exclusively a sad event. It can also be something to be celebrated.
Exactly. So we did have fun talking about Dia de los Muertos in our last program, and today we're going to talk about Obon. So let's get to it. Let's listen now to the introductory paragraph, and then we'll come right back to talk about it.
Celebrated in Japan, Obon is a Buddhist festival that commemorates departed ancestors, whose spirits are said to return to Earth to visit relatives around the 15th day of the 7th month of each year. However, when Japan switched from the lunar calendar to the Gregorian calendar during the Meiji era, different regions responded differently, leading to 3 different Obon festival times.
大家好。第一部分我们来介绍名词 ancestor， 它的意思是祖先或是祖宗。例如 My parents told me that our ancestors were from the Netherlands. 我父母告诉我，我们的祖先是从荷兰来的。又或者说 Nick's ancestors on his father's side came from Greece. Nick 爸爸那边的祖先来自希腊。
Celebrated in Japan, Obon is a Buddhist festival that commemorates departed ancestors whose spirits are said to return to Earth to visit relatives around the 15th day of the 7th month of each year. So this is an annual festival, and it's also a Buddhist festival. So Buddhist refers to a person or something that is related to the religion of Buddhism. So you can say that a person is Buddhist, or a festival can be Buddhist, or a certain belief can be Buddhist as well. And Obon is a Buddhist festival, and it commemorates not just anybody, but specifically your ancestors.
Right, so again, it's a Buddhist festival in Japan, and someone may ask you the question, hey, what's your religion? Do you have any religion? And you may say, oh, yes, I'm Buddhist, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, or whatever. And in this particular case, it's a celebration in Japan for the dearly departed. And here we're talking about departed ancestors. Those, of course, are people in your family who lived many generations before you. I think maybe about 3 or 4 generations, and then further back than that. I don't think you would refer to your grandparents as your ancestors.
Yes, so you might want to do some research into the history of your family. You might want to find out who your ancestors were, where you came from. A lot of people are interested in doing that kind of investigation. They might want to put together a family tree. If you want to put together a family tree, then you have to know who your ancestors are. So Obon is a Buddhist festival celebrated in Japan that commemorates people's departed ancestors who come back to Earth around the 15th day of the 7th month of each year. However, when Japan switched from the lunar calendar to the Gregorian calendar during the Meiji era, different regions responded differently, leading to 3 different Obon festival times. So, first of all, Japan at one time followed the lunar calendar, and then at another time it switched to the Gregorian calendar. The lunar calendar is based on the orbit of the moon, so its divisions of time are based on the orbit of the moon.
Right, so each time the moon goes around the Earth, that's one lunar month. And then, of course, if you're basing your calendar on the sun, then that's either the solar calendar or the Gregorian calendar. So yes, in Japan, they stopped using the lunar calendar and they started using the Gregorian calendar or the Western calendar. And that happened during the Meiji era, which was sometime in the 1800s during the Industrial Revolution and when Japan started modernizing. And different regions responded differently. And then, as a result of that, we've got 3 different Obon festival times in different parts of Japan. So I guess you'll have to do some research to find out exactly when Obon occurs in the part of Japan you're planning on traveling to. And, of course, it's going to be a great time if you go wherever. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's listen now to the second part and learn more about Obon.
During Obon, families make their way back to their hometowns to gather at ancestral homes, clean relatives' graves, and pay their respects at Buddhist temples. Lanterns are illuminated to guide spirits home, and altars are adorned with food for them. The festival itself is a lively affair, with the main custom being a traditional dance called Bon Odori, which is performed to the rhythm of taiko drums. When Obon ends, residents light bonfires or place floating lanterns on rivers and lakes to guide their ancestors back to the spirit world.
第二部分我们看到动词 illuminate， 意思是照亮或是为点点点照明，也可以是阐释或是说明的意思。例如 The sun's bright rays illuminated Dina's bedroom in the morning. 早晨太阳明亮的光线照亮 Dina 的卧房。另外补充这个字的相关名词 illumination， illumination illumination， 意思是照明或是照亮。例如 Illumination from soft, warm lighting creates a peaceful atmosphere. 柔和温暖的照明灯光会制造一股平和的氛围。又或者说 The office, lit by harsh fluorescent lights, had a very unpleasant illumination. 这间办公室使用刺眼的荧光灯，照明相当令人不悦。再来我们看到单字 adorn， 它是动词，指的是装饰或是装扮。例如Brent adorns his home with decorations and lights every Christmas. Brent 每年圣诞节都会用饰品和灯饰装饰家里。又或者说 The ancient Greeks adorned their temples with sculptures of gods and heroes. 古希腊人以神和英雄的雕像装饰神庙。接下来我们看到名词 rhythm， 指的是节奏、韵律或是律动的意思。举例来说 Ronald can't dance well because he has no sense of rhythm.Ronald 不太会跳舞，因为他没有节奏感。再举一个例子 The song's rhythm makes me want to dance. 这首歌的节奏让我想跳舞。
During Obon, families make their way back to their hometowns to gather at ancestral homes, clean relatives' graves, and pay their respects at Buddhist temples. So during this festival, families make their way back to their hometowns, which means they travel back to their hometowns or they go back to their hometowns. Hometown is where you were born, where you grew up. And back there at their hometowns, they gather at ancestral homes. So they gather at their homes of their ancestors.
Right. So to make your way someplace just means to go in that direction. For example, if you're planning to go see the 101 fireworks on New Year's Eve, you might want to decide which time to make your way to that part of the city. Are you going to go early to get a good seat? Or are you going to go later and take your chances? Yeah, when are you going to make your way to Taipei 101? And in this particular case, again, families return to their hometowns. They make their way back to their hometowns and they'll gather at ancestral homes. They'll also clean relatives' graves and pay their respects at Buddhist temples. So again, this sounds very similar to 清明节 here in Taiwan. You're going to clean those graves, the graves of your relatives. You're also going to go to Buddhist temples and pay your respects. There are probably some prayer rituals that you need to go through in order to pay your respects to your ancestors. And notice here that the word respect is plural. You pay your respects. You cannot say pay your respect. That just sounds weird. It's not used in this particular context. Yes, you're going to pay your respects to your ancestors as people do here during Tomb Sweeping Festival.
Yes, you can also use the phrase pay your respects or pay one's respects to talk about the living. You can go visit a family member, usually an elder family member, such as your grandparents or your older family members that you haven't seen in a long time. You can go visit them to pay your respects to that person, to those people. Usually when you pay your respects to someone, you go see and speak to them. Usually you do this to be polite because it's sort of a duty and not necessarily because you actually feel like doing it when you're talking about paying your respects to the living.
Exactly. So these are some things they do in Japan during Obun. And lanterns are illuminated to guide spirits home, and altars are adorned with food for them. I guess those would be offerings or sacrifices. And we've got lanterns. Japan has some really great lanterns, those paper lanterns. We've got those kinds of lanterns here in Taiwan as well. And they're illuminated. They light up. They have a light inside them. And because these lanterns are lit up, they will guide spirits home. Otherwise, they may not know which direction to go to. And also, we've got altars adorned with food for them. If you adorn something, that means you place something there to make it more beautiful or attractive. And indeed, those altars will be quite attractive. They'll have some nice offerings for the spirits of your ancestors, but also they'll look really nice and they'll attract those spirits even more.
Right. So another way to describe the verb adorn is to decorate. You can say that you adorn the Christmas tree with lots of lights and ribbons. And you can also adorn a Christmas tree with candles to illuminate the tree and the surroundings. Now, the festival of Obon itself is a lively affair, with the main custom being a traditional dance called Bon Odori, which is performed to the rhythm of taiko drums.
Okay, so yes, this is lively. It's not a somber occasion. And they like to have that traditional dance, probably wearing traditional costumes. And it's performed to the rhythm or the beat of those taiko drums. If you talk about the rhythm, yeah, you talk about the beat. What's the stressed beat? Which is the unstressed beat? Like boom, 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 boom. That would be a rhythm there. And of course, taiko drums are those big drums that muscular men beat on with those big sticks.
And when Obon ends, residents light bonfires or place floating lanterns on rivers and lakes to guide their ancestors back to the spirit world. So during Obon, the deceased ancestors come back to life, come back to earth to celebrate with the living. But when Obon ends, they have to go back to the realm of the dead, and they may not know their way back because it's far away. And they need light to guide them back. So these floating lanterns, lights that float on rivers and lakes, are meant to guide the ancestors back to the spirit world. And another thing that is done during Obon or towards the end of Obon is that residents light bonfires. So a bonfire is a fire that's usually made outdoors. It's very big, and people usually make bonfires to burn things. If they want to get rid of things in their house, furniture, old clothes, they may make a bonfire and just burn everything and watch everything go up in smoke. And in many cases, there is a kind of an emotional or psychological effect to seeing everything being destroyed by fire. It's almost a kind of cleansing.
Yes, and so if you're a resident, you're just somebody who lives in a particular place, you light that big fire, that bonfire, And then you could also place floating lanterns on rivers and lakes to guide their ancestors back to the spirit world. And that is quite a sight to see. I've never seen that myself with my own eyes, but I have seen pictures, and it does look rather quaint with those lanterns floating on rivers and on lakes. It's probably, again, quite a sight to see. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion of Obon. Let's wrap things up now and listen to the third and final paragraph.
While the Day of the Dead and Obon may seem strange to those who are used to mourning the dead, they offer an important lesson. They remind us to cherish the memories of our ancestors and celebrate life even in the face of death.
第三部分我们看到动词 mourn 指的是哀悼或是感到悲伤。举例来说 Many people gathered to mourn the passing of the popular actor. 许多人齐聚一堂哀悼那位知名演员的逝世。再举一个例子 Mindy's family mourned the death of their beloved cat. Mindy 的家人为他们心爱的猫去世而感到悲伤。最后我们看到单字 cherish 它是动词，指的是珍惜、钟爱或是珍视。例如 Barbara cherishes every moment she has with her children. Barbara 珍惜每个和孩子相处的时刻。又或者说 Becky cherishes her old college friends and she writes to them often. Becky 很珍惜她的大学老朋友，她常常写信给他们。
While the Day of the Dead and Obon may seem strange to those who are used to mourning the dead, they offer an important lesson. So to some of us, including myself, because I tend to associate death with sadness and mourning, the Day of the Dead does seem strange to me, as well as Obon. So here, to mourn means to feel very sad that somebody has died, and to show your sorrow, to show your sadness for the death of that person. And mourning is therefore not just a feeling, but also a demonstration of that feeling.
Right, and of course here mourning comes from the verb to mourn, which means to feel sad about the people who have passed away. And of course you're going to have a somber funeral and things like that. In my own experience, our funerals and our celebration of the dead were quite somber occasions. We did not have these parties and these dances and these lanterns and things like that. So indeed, to me, these types of celebrations might seem strange because I'm used to mourning the dead. Like when my grandparents died, of course, we had very sad funerals for them. But in any case, these offer people an important lesson. I did want to get back to the word mourning here. When I was a kid walking through my neighborhood, I heard the sound of a bird in the tree. I think it went something like this. And I asked my mom, "Hey, Mommy, what kind of bird is that?" And she said, "Well, Roger, that is a mourning dove." So I thought for many years that that was a dove that only came out in the morning. I did not know that the word is actually mourning, meaning feeling sad for the dead, because its call or its song does sound kind of sad.
Yes, and indeed the word mourning, which means to feel sad about the death of someone, and morning, referring to the early part of the day, do sound exactly alike each other. And they are almost spelt the same except for the additional U in the morning, which means feeling sad about someone's death. Now, going back to the celebrations, the Day of the Dead and Obon, they remind us to cherish the memories of our ancestors and celebrate life even in the face of death. So even though these celebrations may seem strange because they are happy in a way, they have a particular function, which is to remind us to cherish the memories of our ancestors. And when you cherish something, you give it value. You keep it in your mind for a long time. You don't forget about it because it's important to you.
Yep, you hold it dear to your heart, so you're going to cherish the memories of your ancestors. You're going to have fond memories of them. And of course, you can celebrate life even in the face of death. We do hear that phrase sometimes. In the face of death, I showed no fear in the face of death. I was in a battle and I was fighting and I knew I was going to die, but I was still very brave. So I smiled, I laughed in the face of death. And then, of course, I passed away. And then my descendants, I should say, celebrated my passing during these particular festivals. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Let's listen now to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始写到，盂兰盆节是日本过的节日，是一个纪念已故祖先的佛教节日。据说他们的魂魄会在每年第7个月15号左右回到世上来看望亲人。好，那么文中是在已故祖先 departed ancestors 后面接了逗号whose spirits are said to return to earth 来做补充说明。那这边我们就来学习 whose 引导关系子句的非限定用法。whose 当所有个关系代名词的时候，后面要接名词，用来表达先行词的什么什么什么。那么当先行词它是特定明确的对象时，我们就不用限定它的范围啦，所以是要用非限定用法。这时候 whose 引导的关系子句功能是在补充说明先行词，所以呢就要用逗号把这个补充说明的关系子句把它跟主要子句隔开来。举例来说，Chris is about to marry his girlfriend, whose parents are both professors. Chris 即将跟他的女友结婚，对方的父母都是教授。那句子里面的先行词是 his girlfriend， 后面用关系子句 whose parents are both professors 是用来补充说明他女友的父母都是教授。那这时候就要用逗号把这个补充说明的关系子句隔开来咯。好，那么另外文中句子也有用到句型是主词 be said to 加原形动词，这是表达据说怎么样怎么样，那是用被动语态来表达这种公认或是普遍的说法。举例来说， The abandoned house is said to be haunted。据说那一栋废弃的房屋有闹鬼。好，那这时候我们也可以用 it is said 加上 that 子句来表达。那像刚刚的例句就可以把它改作 it is said that the abandoned house is haunted。 好，那我们看到课文第二部分提到说，庆典结束时，居民会点燃篝火，或者是在河川湖泊上放置漂浮的灯笼。那么文中是用 resident 来指居民住户，那它是来自动词 reside R-E-S-I-D-E。 那我们来拆解它的字首字根，看到 R-E 这个字首呢，它表示以前再度，那么字根 S-I-D-E 它有 sit 就是坐的意思，那从以前就一直待在那边，存在于某处，我们用这样的方式也许就可以联想到 reside 它有居住定居或是存在于什么什么的意思。那我们现在在 reside 后面去接名词字尾 ENT， 这个 ENT 表示执行某事的人。好，那执行居住执行定居的人应该就可以联想到 resident 它是指居民住户了。我们再来把这个字尾 ENT 改成 ENCE， 变成另外一个名词 residence， 它则有那种居所住宅住处或是居住地的意思。那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Ancestor. One of my ancestors was a brave soldier who fought for his country in World War II. Illuminate. As the new year began, the night sky was illuminated by a brilliant fireworks display. Rhythm. The song had an energetic rhythm that got everyone dancing. Resident. The residents of the apartment building welcomed their new neighbor. Cherish. Danielle cherished her memories of the time she had spent with her grandmother.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, would you prefer to experience the Day of the Dead or Oban, and why?
Of the two holidays, All+互動 is the one I'd prefer to experience since it involves candles and lanterns and lots of lights going down rivers and lakes, and that just seems really pretty to me. So I would like to experience All+互動, also because it's closer to where I live, so I think it would be easier.
Well, I think I'd like to check out All+互動 as well, but still think I'd rather check out Dia de los Muertos. I think I'd rather experience the Day of the Dead in Mexico because of all the colors and the music, and of course, it will be a great opportunity to eat some really yummy Mexican food.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Helen.
I am Roger.
See you next time.